Welcome back to Way of the Warrior Kid by Jocko Willink. Sorry for the delay in the last few videos. Been very busy, and it's a perfectly rainy day today, so I figured today was a good day to catch up. On top of that, we have a very special gift that was donated by Sergeant First Class Elijah Wagner of the Wisconsin National Guard, and this is a very sweet rucksack slash backpack that I will be giving away to the first person that emails me as soon as we conclude the book. So if you're one of those brave warrior kids that's been sticking along with our readings this summer, just email me and you will be the winner of that sweet rucksack. Okay, let's move on to chapter 18. Chasing records and breaking plateaus. Just when you think you know what pain is, there is more. This week I learned about pain. Everything had been going along smoothly, and I felt like I was doing pretty good work and making some real improvements. I was up to 35 push-ups, and I was doing 9 repetitions of a new exercise Uncle Jake had taught me called dips. My swimming was coming along, so I was getting better and was feeling pretty strong in just about everything except the most important thing, pull-ups. That's right, despite all the hard work I had put myself through over the last month, I was stuck on pull-ups. The most I had gotten in a row was 4, and I seemed stuck there. Each workout, I would do a few more push-ups, a few more dips, a few more squats, a few more sit-ups than the last time. But for the last few workouts, I had been stuck at 4 pull-ups, and I didn't know what to do. I'm stuck, Uncle Jake. I can't get past 4 pull-ups, and I don't know what to do. Well, you've been following the workout. You've improved what you have been eating, so this must be a plateau. What's a plateau? I asked. It's when you reach a level that you aren't breaking through. You're not improving the way you should be. Sometimes the body just adapts to stress you're putting on it and stops improving. Oh man, I said, that's horrible. Does this mean I won't be able to do 10 pull-ups? Or even 5? I asked. Uncle Jake shook his head. No, he said, it doesn't mean that at all. It just means we need to break through the plateau. How do we do that, I wondered. Plateau. Well, you know how I said your body has adapted to the stress put on it from working out? Yeah, I guess. I was pretty sure I understood this. Well, here's what is happening. You make the body work hard, or you stress the body, and then in order to deal with that stress, the body builds muscle and gets stronger, or it adapts to the stress. So, my body has adapted a little, I asked. Actually, your body has adapted a lot. You have gotten better in every exercise. You were just stuck, but we'll get you through that. Time to break a couple plateaus. How, I asked. Simple, more stress. More stress? I didn't like the sound of that at all. Yes, more stress. We are going to push you harder. The hardest you've been pushed in your workouts. And we will do a workout specifically based on stressing your pull-up muscles to smash this plateau and get your pull-up numbers increasing. Be ready for a good workout tomorrow morning. Good? What do you mean by good? I asked, worried that Uncle Jake's definition of the word good might be a little different than mine. I guess I mean pain. Be ready for some pain in the morning. That's exactly what I was afraid of. This is what pain looks like. The next morning, the workout was psycho. It started off pretty normally. We did some push-ups, then some sit-ups, then some squats. Then we got to pull-ups, and Uncle Jake said, "Today, you are going to do 100. Pull-ups?" I asked in shock. "Yes, pull-ups. You are going to do 100. Maybe you are forgetting, but I can only do 4 pull-ups, Uncle Jake. How the heck am I going to do 100? I asked. "However you can," Uncle Jake answered. "However you can. Now, get up there and get started." I stepped up on the box, reached for the bar, and did my first set of 4. "Good," Uncle Jake said. "Now do it again." I grabbed the bar and did another 4. "That's 8, Uncle Jake said. "Keep going." I took a little rest, then reached up to the bar and did another 3. "And that is 7. 89 to go." I'm sorry, I messed up. That is 11. 89 to go. So, that is what he meant. I was going to do 100 pull-ups, but now in a row, in sets. Now, since I could only do 4 at the most, it was going to be a lot of sets. But I kept going and going and going. I was able to do sets of 3 for a while, but then around 50, I could only do sets of 2. When I got to 80, I could only do 1 pull-up at a time. Right in the middle of number 87, I felt the pain in my hand. When I got off the bar, I looked down at my right hand. One of the calluses had ripped off. There was a trickle of blood coming out. "I think I'm done," I said to Uncle Jake, showing him my hand. 13 more, Uncle Jake said. "But my hand, it hurts," I told him, hoping he would have mercy on me. 13 more, Uncle Jake said again. I stepped onto the box and grabbed the bar. I did another one. It hurt. Then I did another one. Then I adjusted my grip a little, so I was holding on with just my fingers, and I found that hurt a little less. I did another, and then a few more. Then, finally, I finished 100 pull-ups. My hands were sore and bloody. I had blood on my shirt. I was sweating, but I had done it. "Good job, Mark," Uncle Jake said. Then, in a very serious tone, he added, "But don't quit. Ever." I nodded, and I felt good. Really good. The next day, Uncle Jake told me not to work out at all. And that night, he took me to a movie and to a classic malt shop for a double cheeseburger. 3 days later, I got up on the bar and I did 6 pull-ups. I was on my way. The plateau had been broken, but I hadn't been. Chapter 19, Presidents, Capitals, and Gettysburg. If you thought for a minute that mastering the times tables would be enough for me to learn during the summer, think again. My Uncle Jake had other ideas. He wanted me to learn a bunch of other stuff, too. Once I got the times tables in less than 3 minutes, he made me make flashcards for every state in America and the capital of that state. Next, he wanted me to learn the name of every president we ever had. I had no idea how I was going to do that. So Uncle Jake sat me down. He told me to write down every single president on a piece of paper. "Like flashcards?" I asked. "Nope, not this time. Just write them down on a piece of paper in a row or 2. "Okay." Uncle Jake walked out of the room, and I pulled out a book from school about all presidents. Then I wrote them all down into 2 rows, like he said. Just like this. 2 rows. Just as I finished up, Uncle Jake came back into my room. I showed him the list. "Good," he said. Now, let's trailblaze. What's that? I asked. It's another way to memorize things. Things that are longer and not direct question and answer, like the President's or the Gettysburg Address. What's the Gettysburg Address? I asked. What's the Gettysburg Address? Really? All right. We'll get to that later. Right now, let's focus on the President's. Look at them and memorize the first 10. I'll give you 5 minutes. With that, Uncle Jake walked out the door. Now, what was I going to do? How could I ever memorize these in 5 minutes? I looked down at the paper. Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, Adams, Jackson, Van Buren, Harrison, Tyler. I read through them again. Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, Adams, Jackson, Van Buren, Harrison, Tyler. And I did it again and again. Then Uncle Jake came back in. You got them memorized yet? He asked. I thought he might be kidding, but he wasn't. No, I said, not even close. That's okay. No one can memorize that fast, but you can definitely memorize this easily. Now, take one last look at those first 10, but focus on the first 4. Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison. I looked down at the paper again, looking at the first 4. Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison. Again, Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison. Okay, Uncle Jake said, as he snatched the paper away from me. Go. Washington, Adams, Jefferson, I knew the next one began with an M, but I just couldn't remember the rest of it. Mad? Uncle Jake gave me a hint. Madison. Yes, now look at the paper. And then start over again at the beginning. Down the trail you already made. But try to go just a little farther down the trail each time. I looked at the paper and saw Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe. Uncle Jake flipped the paper over. I started again. Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe. Yes, Uncle Jake said. And who is after Monroe? I actually have no idea. That's okay. Look at the paper again. I looked down and saw that after Monroe was Adams. I thought to myself, Monroe, Adams, Monroe, Adams, Monroe, Adams. You ready? Uncle Jake asked. I guess so, I replied. Go. From the beginning. Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Monroe. I messed up on that. Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, Adams. Yes, Uncle Jake said. That's it. Each time you get stumped, you stop. Take a look, think about how it ties into what you know, and then go back to the beginning of whatever you are trying to memorize, the beginning of the trail. I just want you to finish the first 10 tonight. I will test you on them in the morning. And that was it. It was a simple system, and it worked. I kept repeating the presidents I knew. And then, when I got stumped, I would check the paper, look at it, and try to memorize the next one. And then put the paper down and go back to the beginning. I didn't always get it right. And I got stumped a few times really bad. I had to go back and look at the paper 6 times for Van Buren. What kind of name is Van Buren, anyways? But I got them memorized. The next morning, as soon as I rolled out of bed, Uncle Jake was there. Go, he said. Go? Go where? I asked, still a little groggy. The president's. Let's hear the first 10. Oh yeah, I said. Those, here we go. Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, Adams, Jackson, Van Buren, Harrison, Tyler. Boom! Uncle Jake got a smile out of that. Good job, Mark, he said. Good job. Thanks, Uncle Jake. We headed down for the morning workout. So for the next 4 nights, you can keep you can keep on memorizing the presidents. Once you have those, you can move on to the Gettysburg Address. You still haven't told me what that even is, Uncle Jake. Well, first you have to know about the Battle of Gettysburg, Uncle Jake said. Then he told me all about it. It was a brutal battle in the Civil War near the town of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Almost 50,000 men were killed or wounded in 3 days of fighting. After the battle was over, President Lincoln came to the site and gave a speech called the Gettysburg Address. Although the speech was only 10 sentences long and President Lincoln spoke for only 2 minutes, my Uncle Jake says it was one of the best speeches ever. I copied it out of a history book. 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it, far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Uncle Jake said everyone should memorize that speech. I agree with him, and I will. Chapter 20. Mark versus Goliath on the mat. My whole world changed today. I went to jiu-jitsu class this afternoon. When I walked onto the mat, there was a new kid there. He looked about my age, maybe a year older, but he was much, much bigger than me. In fact, he was as big, if not bigger, than Kenny Williamson. Really big. Doesn't look bigger than me. Just like other days when new kids showed up to class, the instructor pulled the new kid aside and taught him the basics of jiu-jitsu while we were warming up and doing our basic drills for the day. The new kid's name was Jimmy. After warm-up, the instructor sat us down to go over some new moves. We spent some more time drilling those moves, and finally, it was time to roll. I did a round against the usual kids that train all the time. A round with Jeff, a round with Craig, a around with Andy, around with Nora, and then Dean. Some of them beat me, and I beat some of them. It basically boils down to who has been training the longest and the most. The kid with the most experience will win. The whole time I was sparring with the other students, Jimmy was standing on the side, watching. Then, after one of the rounds, the instructor said, "Mark, come over here and train with Jimmy, okay?" I walked over to Jimmy. Now that I was standing near him, I realized how absolutely huge he was. He was definitely bigger than Kenny Williamson. I held out my hand. Jimmy grabbed my hand and squeezed. Not crazy hard like he wanted to hurt me, but he gave it a squeeze, and I could feel how insanely strong he was. I started to get nervous. What if this big monster goes crazy and tries to hurt me? What if he doesn't know his own strength and ends up breaking my arm or my leg or my spine? My nervousness quickly turned to fear. I was afraid. I looked at the instructor and said, "Sir, he is a lot bigger than me. Maybe Jimmy should go with one of the bigger kids." The instructor smiled and said, "You'll be fine. Now go ahead and train." I squared off with Jimmy. We slapped hands, and it was go time. Still scared, I circled around at a distance, maintaining my focus on Jimmy. Jimmy seemed hesitant too. He kind of kept looking at me like he was waiting for something to happen. I circled some more. He waited some more. I circled around him even more, and he kept waiting. Then I realized something. The reason Jimmy was waiting was because he had no idea what to do. He knew nothing. No single or double leg takedowns. No arm locks, no chokes, nothing. He had no idea how to fight. He can't fight. Isn't size enough? Now, me on the other hand, I was no pro, but I had certainly learned some good stuff over the last 6 weeks in jiu-jitsu class. That is why the instructor said I would be fine, because he knew that I knew jiu-jitsu. As I looked at Jimmy's face, my confidence went up, and I decided to go for it. I reached towards Jimmy's face, and with my hand to distract him for a moment, his eyes blinked, and he reached up to block my hand. At that moment, I shot in underneath his hands and grabbed both his legs for a double leg takedown. Almost instantly, I had my arms wrapped around both his legs. I squeezed them together as I pushed him back and to the side with my head. Unable to step back and regain his balance because of my arms around his legs, he began to fall down. He hit the mat, and I definitely got control of him and held him down. He pushed hard against me, but it didn't matter. Even though he was bigger and stronger than I was, it just didn't matter. He didn't know any technique, and in jiu-jitsu, technique triumphs over strength and size. The next thing I did was move into the mount position, and as soon as I did that, Jimmy began to get wild. He bucked his hips and thrashed from side to side, and finally pushed his arms straight up into my chest to try to get me off of him. This is the thing people do when they don't know jiu-jitsu, and that's why we drilled it hundreds of times. When someone tries to push you off, they leave their arms wide open to getting arm locked, and that is exactly what I did. In a flash, I spun around, threw my leg over his head, and sat back with his arm under my control. Once I had his arm extended, I squeezed my legs together and slowly raised my hips to apply the tension, and almost instantly, Jimmy tapped out. Tap out. That was it. I had just tapped out a kid bigger than Kenny Williamson. I almost couldn't believe it. I looked at my instructor. who had been watching and smiled and nodded at me. Then he gave me a stern look. The stern look was to remind me to stay humble in defeat or victory, to show good sportsmanship and honorable behavior. I got to my feet, then reached down to Jimmy to help him stand up. I said, "Good job. You are really strong." He looked disappointed and surprised and said, "Well, it didn't even matter. You are really good at this stuff." Stay humble, I thought to myself as I said, "It's just that I've been training longer than you. Don't worry, it's easy to learn and you will pick it up fast as long as you keep training." "Oh, I'm definitely going to keep training. Don't you worry about that." I wasn't worried at all. In fact, I was happy. Jimmy was nice, but he was also big. That meant I get to train with someone as big as Kenny Williamson all the time. The more I train, the more comfortable I will be. So I was happy that Jimmy will keep training, and I will too. Okay, that is it for our reading for tonight, and I believe we'll probably only have one more video left of the book because we're all the way up to chapter 21 out of 25 chapters. Additionally, besides giving away this free awesome rucksack backpack by the Army National Guard, I'm also going to give away this book as well. So anybody that has paid attention and enjoyed these videos and this book, you can sign up through an email and you could win it. All right. Hope your summer's going good. Talk to you later.